One postcard, one city, one choice that could erase everything Emily thought she wanted. Season 6 of Emily in Paris isn't just a new chapter, it's a turning point where love, ambition, and identity collide, and nothing feels safe anymore. Paris never really lets you go, and for Emily, that truth has never felt heavier. Season 6 opens with her back in the city that shaped her, challenged her, and quietly claimed her heart. On the surface, Emily looks like the same confident marketer who conquered French fashion, but something inside her has shifted. Walking away from Italy wasn't just about Morello, it was about choosing herself. Yet Paris greets her with unfinished business. The streets feel familiar, but the energy is different. Emily is no longer chasing validation, she's questioning it. Her career stands at a crossroads, where success no longer feels exciting unless it feels meaningful. And in that silence between meetings and late-night walks, one question keeps echoing. Did she come back to Paris because it's home, or because she's afraid of what comes next? Gabriel's postcard changes everything. It's simple, romantic, and dangerously tempting. An invitation to Greece that feels less like a vacation and more like a confession. For the first time, Gabriel isn't standing in Emily's way or waiting in the background. He's choosing her openly, but that choice comes with pressure. If Emily follows him, she risks repeating old patterns, running toward love before understanding what she truly needs. Season 6 doesn't rush their reunion. Instead, it stretches the tension, forcing both of them to confront who they are without the fantasy. Gabriel isn't the safe option anymore, and Emily isn't the impulsive girl who jumps without looking. Their connection feels deeper, but also more fragile, because now they understand what losing each other actually feels like. Meanwhile, Mindy's life explodes in the most complicated way possible. Her engagement to Nico looks perfect from the outside, but perfection feels suffocating. The unresolved feelings for Alfie refuse to disappear, turning every celebration into quiet chaos. Season 6 leans into the messiness of love, the kind that doesn't fit into neat choices. Mindy is forced to confront whether stability is enough or if passion always demands a price. Her story mirrors Emily's in unexpected ways, reminding us that choosing a life is often harder than choosing a person. And as friendships are tested, loyalties begin to blur, making even the strongest bonds feel uncertain. Greece enters the story like a beautiful disruption. It's not an escape, it's a mirror. Away from Paris, Emily sees herself clearly for the first time. The glamour fades, the noise quiets, and what remains is truth. This season uses distance to create clarity, not fantasy. Emily realizes that love doesn't need to be dramatic to be real, and success doesn't need to be loud to be fulfilling. But clarity doesn't mean comfort. The more she understands herself, the more difficult her final decision becomes. Every choice costs something, and Season 6 isn't afraid to show the consequences. By the time the season reaches its final moments, one thing is clear. Emily in Paris is no longer just about a girl navigating a foreign city. It's about a woman deciding who she wants to be when the excitement fades. Paris remains the emotional anchor, not because it's perfect, but because it holds her history. Love is no longer a prize, it's a question. And Season 6 ends not with answers, but with a promise. Whatever Emily chooses next will change everything, not just for her, but for everyone caught in her orbit. Paris doesn't feel welcoming this time. It feels watchful. Emily steps back into her old routine, but the rhythm is off. Every success now comes with doubt. Every win feels temporary. At work, expectations are higher than ever, and the pressure to prove she made the right choice by returning is suffocating. She isn't the outsider anymore, and strangely, that makes things harder. Emily starts realizing that belonging comes with responsibility, and responsibility comes with sacrifice. The city she once chased is now asking her to commit fully, not just professionally, but emotionally. Paris isn't testing her talent anymore. It's testing her honesty. Gabriel's absence becomes louder than his presence ever was. That postcard sits like a quiet storm in Emily's life, unread, but never ignored. Greece isn't just a place, it's a possibility. A version of life where love is chosen without fear, without timing issues, without hesitation, but the more Emily thinks about it, the more she realizes how much damage unfinished stories can do. Gabriel represents the past she never properly closed and the future she's scared to imagine. Season 6 slows down their dynamic intentionally, letting the tension build through distance instead of drama. And that distance forces Emily to confront a hard truth. Love doesn't chase you forever. Sometimes it waits once and then moves on. At the same time, cracks begin to show in the lives around her. Mindy's engagement shines publicly, but feels heavy in private. Smiles come easier than answers. Conversations trail off before they reach the truth. Emily notices it because she recognizes it. The feeling of performing happiness instead of living it. Alfie's name is never said, but it's always present, like a shadow no one wants to acknowledge. Season 6 leans into emotional silence, where what isn't spoken matters more than what is. Friendships start feeling fragile, and Emily is forced to ask herself if loyalty means supporting choices you don't believe in. What makes this part of the story hit harder is how grounded it feels. There are no dramatic explosions, just slow realizations. Emily begins to understand that growth isn't loud, it's uncomfortable, it's lonely, and it often happens when no one is watching. Paris starts reflecting that back to her, through missed calls, late nights, and moments where she feels strangely invisible in a city that once made her feel special. This isn't the Paris of fantasy anymore. This is the Paris of consequence. By the end of this chapter, Emily stands at an emotional edge. She hasn't made a move toward Gabriel. She hasn't committed fully to staying either. She's suspended between who she was and who she's becoming. And that uncertainty becomes the most dangerous place of all, because staying still is no longer an option. Distance has a way of stripping people down to their truth, and that's exactly what happens as Greece starts to feel closer, even before Emily decides whether she'll go. The idea of leaving Paris again doesn't excite her the way it once did. Instead, it unsettles her. She begins to question why every turning point in her life seems to require running toward another city. Is she chasing opportunity or avoiding stillness? Season 6 leans heavily into this internal conflict, showing a quieter Emily, one who listens more, reacts less, and finally allows herself to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Gabriel, on the other hand, is no longer frozen in uncertainty. Time away has changed him. He isn't waiting in Paris, hoping Emily will circle back. He's built a life that stands on its own, and that independence makes him more compelling and more dangerous than ever. When their paths begin to align again, the dynamic is completely different. There's no urgency, no desperation, just unresolved emotion hanging in the air. Season 6 doesn't frame their connection as destiny anymore. It frames it as a choice, one that requires accountability, maturity, and the courage to risk disappointment. Mindy's world continues to unravel in parallel. Wedding plans move forward, but her heart drags behind. Nico represents safety, structure, and a future that makes sense on paper. Alfie represents the chaos she never fully faced. The tension doesn't explode, it simmers, and that slow burn becomes painful to watch. Season 6 forces Mindy to confront a reality she's been avoiding. Choosing comfort over truth can feel like peace, but it eventually turns into regret. Her struggle adds emotional weight to the season, reminding us that love triangles aren't about competition, they're about fear. Back in Paris, professional lines blur as personal doubts bleed into Emily's work. She's still brilliant, still creative, but something in her approach has changed. She stops trying to impress and starts trying to understand. That shift unsettles the people around her. Success comes easier, but fulfillment feels further away. Season 6 quietly asks a powerful question. What happens when you get everything you wanted, and it still doesn't feel like enough? This section of the story ends with Emily facing a realization she can't ignore anymore. No city, no relationship, and no job will fix what she hasn't resolved within herself. Whether she goes to Greece or stays in Paris, the outcome will only matter if she finally chooses with intention. And that realization changes the stakes completely. Because now, whatever she decides next will be deliberate, not accidental. Everything starts to converge in this chapter, and the emotional weight becomes impossible to ignore. Emily can feel the pressure closing in, not from other people, but from time itself. Decisions she once delayed now demand answers. Staying in Paris no longer means safety, and leaving no longer guarantees clarity. Season 6 makes it clear that there is no perfect choice waiting for her, only honest ones. The excitement that once fueled her impulsive nature has been replaced by something heavier: awareness. And awareness changes everything. When Emily finally allows herself to face Gabriel without the filters of fantasy or fear, the conversation isn't explosive. It's restrained, raw, and unsettling. There are no grand promises, no dramatic declarations. Instead, there's honesty about missed chances, emotional damage, and the cost of loving each other at the wrong time. Gabriel isn't asking Emily to run away with him anymore. He's asking her to stand still and decide. That subtle shift redefines their entire dynamic. Love is no longer the escape, it's the responsibility. At the same time, Mindy reaches a breaking point of her own. The weight of expectations, family, image, stability becomes unbearable. The engagement that once felt like redemption now feels like a performance she can't maintain. Season 6 handles this moment with emotional restraint, letting silence do the work. Mindy realizes that avoiding pain doesn't prevent it, it only delays it. And when she finally confronts her truth, it sends quiet shockwaves through her friendships, forcing Emily to reflect on her own pattern of choosing what looks right instead of what feels right. Paris responds to all of this in its own way. The city feels less romantic and more real. Opportunities shrink as consequences grow. Emily begins to understand that Paris doesn't reward indecision. It challenges it. The city that once gave her endless chances now asks her to commit to her career, her relationships, and herself. Season 6 uses this tension to strip away the gloss, revealing a story that's less about glamour and more about growth. By the end of this section, Emily is no longer confused. She's afraid, not of losing love, but of choosing wrong. And that fear becomes the final obstacle standing between her and the life she's been circling since the very beginning. The final stretch of the season doesn't rush toward a neat ending. Instead, it slows everything down, forcing Emily and the audience to sit with the consequences of every choice made since season 1. There is no dramatic countdown, no sudden twist that saves her from deciding. What makes this part so intense is how quiet it is. Emily is finally alone with her thoughts, without distractions, without another city calling her name. And for the first time, she isn't asking what will make her happiest tomorrow. She's asking what kind of life she wants to wake up to years from now. Paris, once again, becomes the place where truth is impossible to avoid. Not because it's romantic, but because it's honest. Emily realizes that her relationship with the city mirrors her relationships with people. She fell in love quickly, idealized it deeply, and ignored the hard parts until they demanded attention. Season 6 reframes Paris not as a dream destination, but as a mirror reflecting her growth. She sees how much she's changed, not just professionally, but emotionally. The girl who arrived chasing approval is gone. In her place stands someone who understands the cost of chasing everything at once. Gabriel's presence no longer dominates her thoughts the way it once did, and that realization surprises her. When they finally reach emotional clarity, it's not because they've solved everything. It's because they've stopped pretending. Love doesn't suddenly fix their timing. It doesn't erase the damage or rewrite the past. Instead, it becomes something quieter, more grounded. Season 6 makes a bold choice by showing that real connection doesn't always mean ending up together. Sometimes it means letting go without resentment, and that possibility lingers heavily, making every shared moment feel final even when nothing is officially over. Mindy's journey reaches its emotional peak alongside Emily's. The fantasy she once clung to collapses under the weight of honesty. She finally understands that choosing a life that looks perfect can still leave you feeling invisible. Her arc doesn't end with a clear answer, and that's what makes it powerful. Season 6 allows her to exist in uncertainty, proving that unresolved feelings aren't weaknesses. They're signals asking to be listened to. Her friendship with Emily deepens in this space, no longer built on escapism, but on shared vulnerability. As everything converges, the season quietly dismantles the idea that success, love, and happiness must arrive together. Emily faces a final professional opportunity that once would have thrilled her, but now she hesitates. Not because she doubts her ability, but because she finally understands what she's willing to give up for it. That hesitation marks the most significant growth of her entire journey. She no longer measures her worth by how much she can juggle. She measures it by how aligned she feels with her choices. The closing moments don't offer a dramatic farewell or a shocking cliffhanger. Instead, they leave us with something far more unsettling: peace mixed with uncertainty. Emily stands grounded, not because she has all the answers, but because she's stopped running from the questions. Paris remains behind her, not as a cage or a fantasy, but as a foundation. Love remains possible, but no longer defines her entire direction. And that shift changes the meaning of the series itself. Season 6 doesn't end by telling us where Emily goes next. It ends by showing us who she is when the noise fades. And that's what truly changes everything. Paris glows in the evening light, streets quieting, cafes closing, and the city settling into its familiar rhythm. But Emily isn't the same girl who arrived years ago. Season 6 has stripped away the gloss, the impulsive decisions, the naive chase for approval, and replaced her with someone who understands that life is complicated, messy, and often uncomfortable. This isn't the story of a girl chasing love and success anymore. It's the story of a woman learning to define them on her own terms. And that's what makes her journey in this season so compelling. We leave Emily not at the end of a story, but at a crossroads, one that feels both terrifying and empowering. Paris is her home base, but it's no longer a safety net. Every choice she makes now has weight, consequences that ripple through her friendships, her career, and her heart. Season 6 has reminded us that growth isn't glamorous. It's slow. It's challenging. It doesn't always make sense in the moment, and sometimes it hurts. But the beauty of Emily's story is that she continues to move forward despite the uncertainty. She continues to question, to explore, to challenge herself. And that is something anyone watching can relate to. The messy human struggle of figuring out what we truly want and what we're willing to fight for. The show also takes the time to give supporting characters depth in ways we haven't seen before. Mindy's journey, intertwined with Emily's, highlights the complexity of relationships: romantic, platonic, and professional. Love isn't always straightforward. Happiness isn't guaranteed by engagement rings or career promotions. Season 6 illustrates that every decision carries weight, and every person's journey is valid, even if it doesn't follow a traditional path. The quiet moments, the pauses in dialogue, the lingering looks, and the emotional beats between scenes, these are the moments that hit hardest, the moments that leave us thinking long after the screen goes dark. And then there's the question of what comes next. Greece looms in the background as a tantalizing possibility, yet Paris remains the emotional heart of Emily's story. The postcard from Gabriel isn't just a plot device. It's a symbol of choice, risk, and the unknown. The season doesn't provide easy answers, and it doesn't tie everything up in a neat bow. Instead, it challenges both Emily and the audience to embrace uncertainty. It asks us to consider the importance of staying true to ourselves, even when the world around us is tempting us with simpler, safer options. It's a bold narrative choice, and it elevates the series beyond a glossy romantic comedy into something more meaningful, more human. As the camera pans over Paris one last time, we feel the weight of everything Emily has experienced: the heartbreak, the triumphs, the lessons, and the growth. Season 6 leaves us with a sense of anticipation, yes, but also with a profound appreciation for the journey itself. Emily's story is far from over. The questions remain, the relationships remain unresolved, and the choices she faces are far from easy. And that's the beauty of it. The series isn't just about where she goes next, but about who she is becoming along the way. So, as we step away from Emily's Paris for now, one thing is certain: her journey resonates because it reflects a truth we all know, but often forget. Life isn't about the destinations, the perfect decisions, or the flawless romances. It's about the courage to keep moving, to face the uncertainty, and to continue learning about ourselves along the way. And in that, Emily in Paris Season 6 gives us more than just entertainment. It gives us reflection, growth, and the reminder that the heart of the story lies not in the cities we visit, but in the choices we make and the people we become.